Fall in love and you become, briefly, a slightly broken person. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't concentrate on anything except one specific human who you now think about roughly every 90 seconds. You'll make wild sacrifices, ignore obvious red flags, and feel like the entire universe has reorganized itself around their face. You'll reread their texts like scripture and describe someone you met 6 weeks ago as though you've known them across lifetimes. Stop and look at that from the outside. It's bizarre. Evolution is supposed to be a ruthless efficiency machine that keeps you fed and safe. So why would it build a state that makes you starve, lose sleep, and abandon your judgment over one person? Because that temporary insanity isn't a malfunction. It's one of the most powerful tools evolution ever built, and it exists to solve a problem so hard that pure logic could never have solved it on its own. Love is the only disease your genes actively root for you to catch. We treat love as either pure magic or a chemical trick to be cynically debunked. But it's something more interesting than either, a piece of ancient engineering aimed at a very specific, very stubborn problem. Cold logic is actually terrible at the one thing love is great at. To see why your genes built this beautiful madness, we'll untangle 6 things. The impossible problem logic couldn't solve, the genuinely unhinged chemistry doing it to you, why love had to feel irrational to work, whether it's a Western invention or something deeper, the 2 kinds of love hiding inside the word, and what all of it means for the promise called forever. Let's go. Here's the puzzle. Raising a human child is absurdly expensive and takes years of committed effort from more than one person. So, our ancestors needed partners who would stay through hardship, through sickness, through better options walking past. Now imagine trying to build that commitment on pure logic. A purely rational partner would, every single day, rerun the math. Is this still my best option? Someone richer, stronger, or kinder just appeared. Should I trade up? A relationship where your partner is constantly recalculating whether to leave is not a foundation. It's quicksand. You could never fully rely on it, so you'd never fully invest. Evolution needed a way to make 2 people stop shopping, to bind them past the point where cold cost-benefit logic would keep tempting them to defect. Reason couldn't do that job, because reason's whole nature is to keep reconsidering. You cannot build a stable home on a partner who runs a quarterly performance review on you. So evolution needed something strong enough to override relentless logic. And to do that, it reached for the most powerful tool it has, your brain chemistry. And what it does to you is, frankly, unhinged. Here's how far your body will go to hijack you. In 1999, an Italian researcher named Donatella Marazziti tested a group of people who had recently fallen in love and compared them to a group of people with obsessive-compulsive disorder. She found something startling. The fresh lovers had serotonin markers roughly 40% lower than normal, and those levels were indistinguishable from the OCD patients. Read that again. Neurochemically, early love looks a lot like a diagnosable obsessive disorder. The intrusive thoughts, the compulsive checking of your phone, the total inability to think about anything else, those aren't poetic exaggerations. They're the symptoms of a brain running low on the chemistry that normally keeps you steady. And it's not just serotonin. Brain imaging studies by Helen Fisher and her colleagues found that early romantic love lights up the brain's deep reward circuitry, the same dopamine-driven system activated by drugs like cocaine. So the high of new love isn't a metaphor either. Your brain is, quite literally, treating a specific person like a substance you're addicted to. You didn't fall in love. You developed a chemical dependency on one particular face and called it destiny. But that raises the obvious question. Why would evolution deliberately make you this crazy? Why not something calm and sensible? Because, and this is the clever part, the madness is the entire point. Here's the reframe, and it's genuinely elegant. There's an idea in science sometimes called love as a commitment device. The point of falling in love is precisely that it isn't rational, and that's the feature, not the bug. Think about it. If your partner stays with you only because you're their best logical option, their commitment expires the second a better option appears. But if your partner is helplessly, irrationally, brain-flooded in love with you specifically, then they'll stay even when a better deal walks by. Because love has switched off the part of them that's still comparing. That irrationality is exactly what makes the commitment trustworthy. A promise that survives only while it's convenient is worthless. A promise anchored in something that overrides convenience is one you can actually build a life on. Think of it like a lock on a door. A lock you could open the instant it was inconvenient wouldn't protect anything. Love works by being a bond you can't easily talk yourself out of, which is only possible because it isn't running on logic in the first place. Your genes didn't want you to make a smart choice. They wanted you to make an unbreakable one. Now, at this point, a skeptic pipes up, "Isn't all this just a modern Western fairy tale?" Maybe falling in love is something Hollywood invented and sold to the world. The evidence says otherwise, and it's striking. For a long time, even anthropologists assumed romantic love was a fancy European idea, and that people elsewhere married purely for kinship and economics. Then, two researchers, Jankowiak and Fisher, actually went looking. They combed through ethnographic records from 166 distinct cultures around the world, hunting for concrete signs of passionate love songs, love poetry, tales of longing, couples eloping against the rules. They found it in 147 of the 166, nearly 89%. Later work pushed the number even higher. In culture after culture on every inhabited continent, humans sing about longing, run away together against their family's wishes, and ache over someone they can't have. That's not what a cultural fad looks like. That's what a piece of universal human hardware looks like. You can find aching love poetry carved in ancient Egypt, sung in classical India, and written in medieval Japan. Civilizations that never touched, each independently producing the same lovesick verse about the same impossible longing. Romantic love isn't a Western export. It appears to be standard equipment for the species, expressed differently everywhere but present almost everywhere. The chemistry we just described is running in humans all over the planet. Turns out heartbreak wasn't invented by pop music. Pop music just finally found its market. But if love is universal hardware, why doesn't it just stay at full blast forever? Because what we lazily call love was never actually one thing. Here's the part that reframes the spark died panic. What we call love isn't one thing. It's at least two different systems, and they're built to hand off to each other. The first is passionate love, the obsessive, can't eat, can't sleep, dopamine-soaked, serotonin-crashed early stage we just described. Its job is ignition, to grab two people, fuse their attention, and launch the bond hard and fast. It's intense precisely because it's meant to be temporary, a booster rocket. In fact, that OCD-like chemistry tends to settle back toward normal within roughly 12 to 18 months. That's not the relationship failing. That's the booster burning off on schedule. The second is attachment, the calmer, steadier bond built more around chemistry like oxytocin. It doesn't spike and crash. Its job isn't ignition, it's endurance. It's what actually carries a partnership through decades and through raising children. The tragedy is that we're taught only the first one counts as real love. So when the fireworks fade and the quieter attachment takes over, people panic and think love is dying, when actually the system is just shifting into the gear built to last. The fireworks are the trailer. Attachment is the actual movie. But here's a genuinely hopeful wrinkle before we go on, because it turns out the fireworks aren't always gone for good. For a long time, the assumption was simple: passionate love always fades, full stop, and long married couples are just running on comfortable habit. Then researchers looked closer. In one study, scientists scanned the brains of people who'd been married for over 20 years and still reported being intensely in love with their partner. And in a small number of them, that same deep dopamine reward system, the one that fires in brand new lovers, was still lighting up. So it isn't quite true that the fireworks are guaranteed to die. What seems to fade reliably is the anxious, obsessive part, the OCD-like desperation, the can't-eat panic. The rewarding, joyful pull toward your partner can, in rare cases, endure for decades. But, and this matters, those couples are the exception, and they didn't get there by passively hoping. They got there by actively building. Lasting passion exists. It's just not something that happens to you. It's something you renovate, which leads to the strangest implication of all, one that quietly contradicts the biggest promise we build our lives around. Here's the uncomfortable, freeing twist. If love is an evolved commitment device, then "I will feel exactly this forever" was never a promise your biology could keep. The intense, obsessive version is designed to fade. That's not the death of love, it's the plan. So the couples who last aren't the rare few who somehow keep the anxious fireworks burning for 60 years. Nobody sustains that. The chemistry literally won't allow it. The ones who last are the ones who let passionate love do its ignition job and then deliberately build the attachment love that's meant to carry the weight afterward, and, in the lucky cases, keep just enough of the reward alive to still light up when their partner walks in the room. Real, lasting love, in this view, isn't a feeling you fall into and passively keep. It's a bond your biology starts for you with fireworks, and then hands you the responsibility of maintaining once the fireworks, right on schedule, burn out. Biology gives you the down payment. The mortgage is on you. So if the anxious fireworks are designed to fade and lasting passion is something you build, what actually does the building? A few things the research keeps pointing at. First, stop chasing the high. Trying to recreate the desperate, early obsession stage means chasing a chemical state your brain is designed to exit, and mistaking its natural fading for failure quietly ends more good relationships than almost anything else. Second, deliberately feed the attachment system. Consistent affection, reliability, being the person your partner can actually depend on. That's the chemistry built to last, and it grows through repetition, not intensity. And third, here's the counterintuitive one. Novelty can genuinely reignite the reward system. Research by Arthur Aaron and colleagues found that couples who regularly do new, slightly exciting things together report more satisfaction and attraction than couples stuck in comfortable routine. The dopamine system that lit up in week 1 still responds to novelty, so sharing new experiences can, in effect, top up the tank. Put simply, you don't keep love by clinging to the fireworks. You keep it by tending the steady fire and occasionally throwing something new on it. The secret to lasting passion is less "never let the spark die" and more "schedule a slightly scary date night." Step back and love stops looking like either random magic or a cynical chemical con. It looks like an elegant solution to an impossible problem. How do you get two self-interested animals to commit to a years-long, costly project, raising a humanish when cold logic would keep tempting them to walk away? You can't reason them into it. So evolution built a feeling powerful enough to override reason, strange enough to look like a clinical obsession, universal enough to appear in nearly every culture on Earth, and then a quieter one built to keep them together long after the fireworks fade. Love is irrational because it had to be. That's the whole point. So the next time you feel that ridiculous, illogical, can't think straight pull toward one specific person, don't be embarrassed by how unreasonable it is. The unreasonableness is the design. It's an ancient device for making a promise your logical mind could never be trusted to keep, aimed at the hardest problem our species ever faced, and it's been running in humans on every continent for as long as there have been humans. Love isn't logic failing, it's logic being deliberately overruled, for a very good reason, and that raises the last great myth we have to take apart. If love is a device your brain runs on almost anyone the conditions are right for, then what about the one? Your single destined soulmate out of 8 billion people. Why the one doesn't actually exist is the next one.